Jesus assumed that our moral duty to love our neighbor is to be based on how we love ourselves. Jesus said that. Now, you might not care, but I think you do. You're in this room. And I do care what Jesus taught. He is the chief authority for my faith and practice in life, period. And he said, you love your neighbor as you love yourselves. So that I unpack this a little bit for you. Humans have a natural self-regard for our own survival. You do. If you have a serious psychological disorder, it's different. But most humans, most of the time, care about how you feed yourself, clothe yourself. Some of you don't care about how you clothe yourself. But I'm kidding. That was a joke. Protecting yourself, you want to relate well to others. Most human beings like to have friendships and relationships with people. That's healthy, normal. You care about surviving. So loving yourself is treating yourself as an object of value that is worth keeping safe. That's why you got up this morning and probably had some food, water, something. That's that natural sense of loving ourselves, to agape care for my own good, own survival. That's it. So Jesus is saying that when you love your neighbor, you're doing the same thing for them. If there's a person in front of you in need that needs food and shelter and basically you do the same thing. Matthew 7:12. Treat others as you want to be treated. But now I'm focusing on loving yourself. We do have a sense of self-regard for our own survival. Now don't confuse this. Don't confuse self-love with selfishness or arrogance or narcissism. Loving yourself doesn't mean you think you're more valuable than other people. Christians don't think they're super awesome high, and they don't think they're a horrible piece of junk. There's the sweet spot. I'm a child of God. I don't think I'm more important than you. We're equally important before God. And how, of course, can I serve you? How can I love you and care for you? It doesn't mean I think I'm awesome. Self-love doesn't mean arrogance. I put on clothes this morning. You're arrogant. What? You have a Gatorade or whatever this is. You're selfish. No, I'm not. I'm just taking care of my own good. That doesn't make any sense. C, don't confuse self-love with self-indulgence. It doesn't mean you give yourself whatever you want whenever you want it. And I just said that's a cuss word sentence to a modern American's little footnote. We worship autonomy. I think it's the greatest satanic lie of our generation, maybe of the human race, that what you exist is to do what you want, whenever you want it, all the time. Don't confuse that with Jesus and self-love. Those are radically different. Loving yourself is just self-stewardship. God said, here's yourself. Here's your body, your mind, your heart, and soul. Take care of it. Take care of it. I say, Brandon, here's my brisket. Please cook this well. Take good care of this. Steward this brisket with your life. And he said, oh, David, more than my life. Amen, he said. That's stewardship. If Jennifer said, I'm giving you my sick horse, please take care of stewardship. That's what we are. God has granted you, Melody, you. Take care of it. It's not self-indulgence. I give myself one I want. No, it just means I'm taking care of myself well. If you give yourself whatever you want when you want it, you'll probably hurt yourself all the time. Letter D, our ability to love comes from God's love. So our ability to love others comes from God's love, not just how well we love ourselves. I say that because I heard this a lot in counseling. People say, isn't it true, right? I can't love other people if I don't love myself. That's not true. That's not true. You're not waiting on that. 1 John 4:19, 2 Corinthians 9:8. No, we love because God first loved us. We don't love others because we love ourselves first. We love others because God first loved us. We don't wait until we're fully whole or completely self-loving before we're loving others. That doesn't make any sense. Now, if you do habitually neglect to take care of your own needs, you are more likely deficient at taking care of others' needs. That's true. Like if you're chronically exhausted caregiver, you're going to struggle to be patient and attentive and loving and sweet and gentle like Madeline is all the time. If you're financially struggling, you're going to have fewer material resources to help other people. If you have unresolved emotional wounds, like a few people, I'm kidding, everyone I know, you're going to will unintentionally project them to other people. So sure, if you neglect repeatedly, you're going to have, any analogy works, your tank's going to be emptier from which to draw to get others. There's handouts in the back if you want to get. So sure, absolutely. But in general, don't sit back and go, I can never love someone else after this. I'm fully all whole. Now, some of you right now still can't hear me because your shame part is so loud in your mind that you're thinking, no, I'm no good at loving because I'm bad at loving myself. And I'm saying that's false gibberish. It is true that if you're really bad at loving yourself, you will naturally not be very good at loving other people. But your ability to love comes from God loving you. He loves through you, loves through you. And letter E, when we neglect self-love, your need for love doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. Instead, what you do is you keep seeking that love from other people, but in unhealthy ways. And then you get burned out, resentment, dysfunctional relationships, and so forth. Any question or comments about that sense of loving ourselves? Loving ourselves. Any question or comments about that? Anything you want to add or subtract? Does that resonate with you? Yeah? Some I know it does because you're nervous because you're shaking your legs and feet a lot and crying. I'm kidding. You can cry, though. It's safe to cry. No question about that. Self-love. Here's the test. I'm going to move on just real quickly because this is that'd be a different study, but it's worth saying it. I want you to say aloud, and don't think about it too long. I want you to say it and then see how it feels. You ready? First off, please tell me you're going to say it. Just trust me. You're not going to say a cuss word or curse God or your spouse or friend. Just, David, I'll say it. Please. David, it's how cults start. I'm just letting you know this is what happens. This is step one. No, seriously, here it is. Say it without thinking. I love myself. Say it. Some of y'all have muttered that crap. How do you feel? Does it go, yes, I do? Or do you go, normal, healthy Christian individuals should be able to say, I love myself. And that just feels peaceful when I say it. Like, yep. Why would you not love yourself, right? I love myself. I care for my own good. Yes, I do. I do care for my own good. And if you start feeling guilty about that, that's a different issue. If you say, oh, I think I'm arrogant, I already talked about this. That's selfish. We talked about this. There should be a calming piece of, it feels good just to say it. I love myself. I do care about how I'm doing. We would act like that. This whole study, this next part is about, we'll see if you do love yourself. You'll see how you treat yourself. Number two, when we don't take care of our own needs, we're likely to have boundary problem. That's the whole problem. If we don't take care of our own self, we probably have a boundary problem. That is, neglecting self-love is typically a sign of an internal boundary problem. Poor internal boundaries lead to excessive self-sacrifice, guilt, emotional enmeshment. In church life, this is very common. They'll say they're the people who, they serve. A lot of times they have poor boundaries. I can tell if they're always giving of themselves. If you always give of yourself, you're not being self-loving. You're not just self-sacrificial. You don't have a self. And that means you're enmeshed. That's not healthy. It's different from saying they sacrifice themselves. They're a sacrificial person versus that's all they do. If all they do, you're probably a rescuer, or you're enmeshed, or you're codependent. That's different. Healthy boundaries allow us to give freely out of love, not compulsion. I love how Paul says in 2 Corinthians 9:7. In 2 Corinthians, Paul's talking to the church about giving money, and he says, give without compulsion, give generously, because God loves a cheerful giver. That is, I cheerfully, generously love to give this gift. I can't wait to give you this. Now, by metaphor, by analogy, I think it's the same thing about physical and emotional giving to people. If I serve Bonnie, I'm going to do so because I want to serve her. Not, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor, what will she think about me? I'm a piece of junk, who cares what my needs are, but this is really painful, but I don't want to do it. That's not healthy, that's not Christian. It's not Christian. Christian, when you have healthy boundaries, my tank is full enough to go, I want to give this. I won't resent her for it. I won't feel guilty because of it. I'll just, no, I did it because I wanted to. This is very, very common. When people are accustomed to people using that against them, because they do it and in church life, all have a lot of experience with this, because they're scared to say the word no. So when I have conversations with people, I go, hey, I have an idea. You can say no to me. They'll go, I know, no, please listen. Please let that sink in. My relationship with you is not at stake if you say no to me. Period. It's just I see a giftedness in you in this issue, and I have a need over here, and I think you might be a good fit. But I want you to think and pray about it, unless you just go, yes. But I want you to, if you say no, it's okay. I don't know what's going on in your world. It's okay to say no. But if you're used to having a person coming to you, like I am in church life, going, okay, if they don't do it freely, if they feel compelled to do it, they're going to resent you for it, and they're going to quit. I've seen it many, many times. It's the same thing with lives, friendship, spouses. Healthy boundaries allow us to give freely. We don't feel compelled. So when I say, yes, I'll show up and do that. Yes, I'll help in the nursery. I do because I want to help. Or I help you. I'll call you at middle of the night, whatever. Letter C, when we live according to the Spirit, that's Paul's point, Romans 8:14. True children of God are led by his Spirit. We manifest internal self-control. That's a fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Did you understand that past English? That's Galatians 5:23, baby. I lack self-control. That is not saying no to ourselves, is an internal boundary problem. So a lack of self-control, that's an internal boundary problem. When I can't say no to myself, let that sink in. When I can't say no to myself. So an external boundary to other people is if Julia said, I want to come into your room at night and talk to my friends till 3 in the morning on your bed while you try to sleep. Nope, you can't. That's my bedroom. In fact, it's my house and my phone and my air conditioning, my heating. Everything about your life is paid by me. Let's pause on that for a while and let that sink in. No, okay. I would say there's a physical boundary. No, you can't come in that late because you need to go to sleep. That's the other. That's saying no to external space. An internal boundary is saying no to your own desires so that you practice what we call self-control. And most of the time, if you don't love yourself, you have a boundary problem. I can put your finger on it usually. Any questions or comments about that before we move on? No? There's a handout in the back if you want it. David, did you see the handout on the table if you want it? Okay, we're going to move forward. So the following are common areas of internal boundaries that Brandon alone suffers from. And I thought maybe I could eavesdrop on his life. So all the following he struggles with. These are problems of I'm kidding. Self-control. I'm afraid. I had to tease Brandon. He's the only one who wouldn't get up and walk out every time I try. These are common areas of internal balance. Okay, number one, eating. Raise your hand. I'm kidding. It can be it can be very difficult to say no to our desires to eat. It can be very difficult to say no to our desire to eat. Chronic binge overeaters, they use food as a false boundary. That is, it's an avoidance tactic against emotional pain or relational stress. Overweight people can experience extreme shame and self-hate, which of course reinforces the addiction to food. Every time. All addictions are shame-driven. Take it to your grave, tattoo it on your friend's forehead. I'm telling you they are. If you didn't feel shame, you wouldn't be doing it. Shame increases the desire to reinforce the behavior that got you there in the first place. And for whatever reason, I heard a study this years ago, must have been 25 years ago, but it's in my experience, this has been proven true. The two addictions for which people seem to suffer the most shame about is sex, any kind of sexual addiction or inappropriate pornography, prostitution, whatever it is, and the other is eating. American culture does not feel much shame about overspending, over gossiping, over whatever. Those two tend to have the most amount of extreme self-loathing, what I look like in my body. So here's some ways the internal boundary can be an attempt. The internal boundary can be an attempt to avoid intimacy. I should say internal false boundary. I should say that. Avoiding intimacy. It might sound like this. They won't get close to me if I'm this big. Food brings me comfort that other people can't give me. That's very common if you've been molested. It's very common for people who are overweight because they were hurt in their childhood. When I'm around people who are really overweight, if I counsel them, I assume they were probably dealt with inappropriate as a child. Because it's a very, very common false boundary. I will eat and eat and eat and eat. So there's a part of their wounded child that says if I get really obese, they won't find me attractive, which means they won't touch me, which means I'll be hurt. And so that ice cream is not about ice cream, and nor is it about weight. It's feeling safe. And I can't get close to you because you're not going to find me attractive. That's a common thing, which is, of course, terribly sad. It's just woundedness. But they don't say no to themselves because they're trying to protect themselves. Another one is they don't say no to themselves on food because they're trying to avoid distressing feelings or situations. It might sound like this. If I stay overweight, people won't expect much from me. They'll leave me alone. If I let myself lose weight, I might attract attention that I don't want. If I eat alone, I don't have to deal with people disappointing me. I feel safer when I take up more space, like I can protect myself better this way. There's different things, situations. I don't have to get close. These are all related, but I can avoid feeling badly. And the fact is, when you shove your face full of sugar and your body metabolizes it, you do have endorphins. It feels good, right? It feels better for a little bit. If not, try it one time. I mean, it just does. That's the difference between eating a little bit of ice cream versus half a gallon, or eating 2-3 cookies versus eating 12. Because eventually you get that sugar buzz and you feel better. And if you have a problem with that, not because it's a once in a while thing, but a problem with it where in general, I'm telling you, you have an internal boundary problem of self-control on this issue. You're trying to protect something or avoid something. Avoid distressing feelings. I don't want to feel sad. Let's go get drunk. I don't, the better example, sorry, I'll get that in a second. That's later on alcohol. I don't want to feel sad. I'll go eat ice cream. I don't feel sad. Let's go to McDonald's. I don't feel sad. Let's get Dairy Queen. This has been a rough day. Let's eat half a pound of cake. It's been a rough day. I'm gonna eat some cheesecake. When you associate rough, stressed, worried with food, you have a food addiction, and you're using it to avoid something. It's one of the signs of addiction. Anyway, bottom of 12, a false internal boundary can be an attempt to soothe unresolved emotional wounds. Like, I can't control anything else in my life, but I can control what I eat. That's a common one too. Work is so out of control. My so-and-so's mad at me, my friend's mad at me, but I can control what gets in my mouth. And of course, eating numbs me. Food's the only way that's always there for me. People do the same thing with animals. They'll do that with food. Food's the only thing that's always there for me. Never demands. I never feel bad about myself with ice cream, and that's why they can get addicted to animals too. Animals never hurt me and betray me. But anyway, I'm already miserable, so I might as well eat whatever I want. I deserve this after the day I've had. Food's my reward. If I focus on my food, I don't focus on my pain, and on and on. So yes, good question. Do they feel guilty? Yes, ma'am. They sure can. Yep. Yeah, they can. I, I, I think statistically, the one they're going to feel the strongest is shame. What's that? I'm a bad, worthless. Look how horrible and stupid I am. Versus guilt, which is I've done something morally wrong. Like, this is a sin to overeat. It is a sin. That's a lack of self-control. Any addiction is a lack of self-control, which by nature is the opposite of what God wants for us. And we're doing it in order to lose the self-control. I know I ought not eat all this. I'll do it anyway. When I say I know I ought not to, that's a moral compulsion. And we say I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, I would say that's a sin. Yes, ma'am, I do. I do. But in counseling, as many people know, my goal in a counseling perspective is not to make sure they know how guilty they are, but to help struggle with the shame part. Because I don't think, in my experience, most people aren't doing it because they're trying to feel guilty or trying to offend God. It's a shame cycle, not a screw God cycle. It's not that, which means I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is something different: woundedness and shame. Woundedness, they're trying to avoid something. And so I'm almost completely interested. I'm 99.9% interested in what are you trying to avoid? What's the wound, to use internal family systems? There's a part of you that says, quick, I'll solve the problem. Let's go eat ice cream. I want that part to calm down to figure out that wounded child. Why does that wounded child feel the need to be rescued by ice cream? And let's heal that wound. And then the desire for overeating goes away. It just plummets. I don't think with any of those, don't you know that's not lack of self-control? What's wrong with you? But if I'm in a cool moment, like in this class right now, basically, and I'm going, but is that a righteous thing to do? I'd say it's not righteous. No, when you deliberately do this and you know you shouldn't and you do it anyway, that's a sin. Anything, anything excessive is an addiction. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yeah. So I will accidentally overeat at a restaurant. Maybe I ate too quickly, too much pizza, and that was gluttony. But that's not addiction to pizza. It might mean I want to eat that last. Well, every day, it depends, yeah. So typical addiction is a chronic, that is a repeated, quote, over a long-term behavior that is overindulgent on a particular substance or thing or practice. And most psychologists will say, which causes distress, which causes high distress. And it's marked by an inability to say no to it. It's marked by an inability or a very, very difficult time of saying no to it. That if there's a deep internal struggle, that's a symptom of addiction or you have it. The party goes, I don't do it, but yeah, but I need to, I'll just, if there's those are signs you're addicted. Those are signs. Which again, the answer is to that response is, okay, well, let's figure out why we're addicted. Let's fix it. Let's heal. This whole shame stuff only recycles it. So, little footnote, you need to be around people. If you suffer from addictions, ever, if you feel that internal whatever. You need to talk to someone who's able to handle that and go, you need to find someone, I know someone, who goes, okay, well, how can I help you get over that? How can we heal? That's what you need. You don't need to, what? How could you do so? Have you read Galatians 5:23? Because in the moment, what you're going to do is you're right, you're right, you're right. Okay, oh, I am bad. Oh, yeah, and you're going to leave and go do it again. That doesn't help. That's just judgment. So top of page 13, quickly, loving yourself means understanding food is, say it with me, fuel to be used within healthy limits and not as a substitute for dealing with emotional issues. So here's how I would ask if you ever struggle with this. Here's the question I would ask. What am I truly hungry for? What pain am I avoiding? Not every time you eat a piece of chicken. What am I really hungry? Well, this chicken. When I eat brisket, I mean brisket. Oh, no, you're swallowing your pain. Maybe a little bit. But what I mean is if you struggle with the temptation to overeat or you are overeating on a normal basis, now how do you know I'm overeating? Sometimes there's another test too when it comes to food, which is a little different from other stuff, which I like. I tend to like more clear cut, like that seems obvious. Under normal conditions in Western medicine, normal BMI and normal height, there's a range of what your weight should be on normal healthy ranges, right? Any physician knows that. And so if you find yourself way outside of bounds for obvious reasons, there's your sign that you might need to back down. Now the question is not, it doesn't follow from that. If you're naturally overweight, you're addicted to food. It does follow from that. Why am I at this level while I'm so far past the average? What is it? Was I just taught poorly in childhood? Okay, that's not an addiction. Maybe I never thought about it. I'm trying to give you questions to ask yourself. What happened to get to this point? But if the answer to the question is, deep down when I'm really honest with myself, it's because I overeat when I'm stressed, or when I'm bored, or when my feelings are hurt. Okay, well then let's keep exploring that because I want to love myself. And what am I really hungry for right now? Connection, feeling good about myself. And so, well, let's talk about those. There's ways to. Cookies don't give you those things. What pain am I avoiding? Let's talk about that. No, let's have some cookies. I hear you. I know that's what you want. Put the cookie down. Just for 5 minutes, let's talk about your feelings first. I'm doing one time. I'm going to do therapy. I'm behind me. I'm going to put up a table with a plethora full of great desserts. And I'm going to say, hey, eyes up here. Hey, fella. See that way they can concentrate. I'm just joking. Yeah. Just because you like food doesn't mean you're addicted to all those things. So all that to say. All right. Any questions or comments about that one? Yes, ma'am. Great question. Great. So that's seriously a good one. So I'm really stressed out and I really want a cigarette, but instead I substitute cigarette with food. Fantastic example. So if I were a therapist, I'd say, great, let's explore this. Let's explore the most difficult part of that. That is when you are distressed, what are you thinking and feeling in that moment before you decide to avoid it? Let's stay with the pain. Let's stay with the stress. Tell me what you're hurting about. Let's honor that part of you by listening to her. And I would say, baby, tell me what you're scared of. Right now, what are you scared of? What's causing the pain? I tell you what, if you'll talk to me for 5 minutes, we will stuff your mouth with 30 cigarettes. Let's talk first. We won't need it. That's what you need to hear right now to go, okay, I'll talk to you. Fine. We're not going to do it because it's ridiculous. You won't need it. Talk to me. What are you, well, I'm scared. Okay, why are you scared? Like with no judgment. And when that wounded part gets heard and validated and someone's with them, not trying to fix them and give them just a bunch of Bible verses, and I love Jesus and Bible verses, but they're with them going, okay, I love you. And how can we help you feel validated and honored right now? I'm telling you, the parts in us that defend us will just behavioral scientists will go, when you go to the cupboard, I would look at food. You can do that. You can figure out ways, and I'm all about that. But on an emotional level, the cure is that, not just the symptoms. Symptoms are good to focus, but for example, a symptom would be, oh, well, they don't bring junk food at home. Well, I can go to the store. Well, then hide your keys. Or what you can do. That's great. That is great. But the cure is to figure out what in the moment that you're thinking, I need a blank, what's going on inside of you. Let's talk about that. Let's journal. Let's figure out that. Thank you. That's good. Any other question comment about that? Don't even be afraid of food. Food is fuel. Food is fuel. Food is fuel. Money. Money, money, money. Speaking of Brandon, it can be. That's why I call him Brandon Moneybags G. Simpson. It can be very difficult to say no to our desire to spend money. Devotion to money is the source of all kinds of evil. Not money itself, the devotion to it. 1 Timothy 6:10. Money, of course, isn't the issue. It's not. It's the devotion to it. Our devotion it often arises from deeper emotional or spiritual dysfunctions that weaken our internal boundaries, leading us to seek security, identity, or self-worth in wealth rather than God. Does that make sense? Our devotion to money typically comes from other dysfunction inside of us that weaken our ability to say no to it. It's like it's not food, it's what food can provide. It's not money, it's what we think money can provide. I can walk to Walmart and see all the pastries and look at it and just keep going by. But if I look at it and go, oh, I'm hungry, I'd feel better without ice cream. The food didn't do anything. It's my belief toward it, my devotion toward it. Same thing about money. At $5 is $5 is $5. But if I'm starving and $5 buys me, I don't care a whole lot about that $5. Money does things for it. It can. So, for example, a common lack of internal boundaries are impulse spending. Buying this will make me feel better. Right then, I got to get it. Money becomes a way to soothe pain, escape stress, experience a quick high, especially to avoid boredom, sadness, or anxiety. How many trillions have been purchased on Amazon because of that? Late night scrolling, cling, 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 cling. Another package. Who ordered this? It says Timu. Kathy! It's like, I don't remember buying. I'm kidding. That's a joke. She remembers every sassy pants. Impulse spending is a big one. I will feel better if I buy that. I grew up in seasons of my life, my childhood, big seasons where I was really, really poor. Now, it's all relative. There were poorer people in the world who lived on dirt huts, but we were poor. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know if clothes didn't fit. And so there's times in my life to this very day, I feel a bit of drive sometimes to do impulse spending, though I'm not. I'm the exact opposite, but I feel it sometimes, impetuousness like, but I really want it. And when you have years of childhood where you can't have the thing and everyone else can have it, they're probably just like, ugh, but I have $20 now and I want that thing, you know. So I have to, that's a part of me. I notice that in me, part of me is a sense of, because it'll make me feel better that I finally can get it. It's like my child says, are we safe to buy that? And I go, let's get it. But I still goes through a filter. I'm saying part of that, I get that sense of drive. But if you don't filter it through the adult, no debate, we don't, it's okay. Yes, we can afford it, but we're not because of, we're trying to be as rich as Brandon. You have to have that self-control. I'm never going to stop. I'm not going to stop. Entitlement, I deserve this even if I can't afford it. I've heard people say this. Well, I deserve it. If you really think you're awesome, then you'll get whatever you want whenever. You're not going to throw a fit. I deserve it. I deserve it. I deserve nice things. I've heard that before, and they are baroque. I deserve validation. People will be impressed with me or they're going to like me, right? I need people to be impressed with the cost of my shoes, name brands. I mean, that's the whole point of name brands. You know, when they go out of season, like Gucci bags or whatever, if it's out of season every 20 minutes, you know what the store workers are commanded to do with that material? They don't give it to the homeless. They don't sell it on eBay and give it to orphanages. You know what they do? They take a knife and slash it up in the trash can in the back. Literally, there's tons of they slice it all up so that you can't resell it. Then they dump it. It's just cheap leather, but it says G on it. And you can sell it for $2,000 because it says G or whatever. I mean, it's stupid. Sorry, I'm sorry. Deep breaths. But the compulsive desire to have name brand is not because it's necessarily greater quality. They've done studies that prove it's not true. Some is, a lot of it is not. But it makes the person feel like now I'm part of a pack of people who will look up to me because I have, quote, name brand or nicer things. And that's sad. That's using money for validation. Avoidance, I'll just ignore my finances and hope it all works out, right? Usually childhood patterns, money was either mismanaged or seen as a constant source of stress. You do the budget. I don't think about it. I'll just ignore it. It'll work out. That's just avoidance. Manipulation, if I don't help them financially, they won't love me. I can rescue It's not generosity. You're just afraid of abandonment or feelings of shame. That's it. I'll give, I'll give, I'll give. Because if I stop giving, they won't like me. If I stop giving them a handout, they won't love me. If I don't give them this money right now, what would they think about me? They're going to call me selfish. They're going to call me all kinds of things. And if you can't process those attacks on your character well, you're going to go, okay, okay, here's all my money. And that's manipulation. Either you're giving into it or you're doing to someone else. Okay, I'll give you $20, but you owe me. Ugh. Of course, hoarding. Hoarding, I need to protect what's mine at all costs, and that's that fear of scarcity or a misplaced sense of security and whether God's going to provide for you. Jesus prohibits storing up treasure on earth. He says in Matthew 6, rather than trusting in him. Christians don't hoard. Well, David, I know some Christians who do. They're all going to hell. I don't think that, but it's an emotional wound, and it is a sin. They're hoarding up, hoarding up. At the root cause of most hoarders, I'm telling you, is that what we call scarcity principle. It's a deep, deep fear. I won't have enough. And so I collect and I collect and I collect and I collect. And since the problem is an emotional wound, not a materialistic need, it never solves the problem. Ever. If you said, I'm really, really hungry, and I said, good, just take some good deep breaths. You feel full? No, keep doing it. That's what hoarding is. That's what food is for emotional pain. I'm really sad. Did you eat some ice cream? Feel better? Well, a little bit. I'm still depressed. Just keep eating more. It'll fix it. No, that's not the problem. You're not solving the problem at all. And that's what hoarding can do. That's what hoarding can do. Loving yourself means recognizing that money is a tool. Food is fuel. Money is a tool. Not an identity or a source of security. It just isn't. We treat it as a means by which we can care for our own needs and for our neighbor's needs. So if you have a struggle with this, you ask yourself the question, am I trying to escape, impress, avoid, manipulate, or control people by this money? That's where, if you have a struggle with it, what am I trying to do with this? Yeah, finding Nemo, and he goes, fish are friends, not food. Good, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're in a support group. That's right, that's right. That's right. Any questions or comments about money? At the end of the study, Brandon's going to be giving out blank checks, so I'm excited about today's pastor study is special. Very special. Or is that next week? I can't remember. Nobody uses check. PayPal, Venmo, schicking. Moneybag Simpson, I declare it. Yeah, that's some Bible. Okay. Bottom of 13. Time. Cyndi Lauper told us all about it. It can be very difficult to say no to our desire to overcommit or to let time slip away without intentional planning. Time is one of the most valuable, non-renewable resources God has entrusted to us. Let that sink in, please. One of the most valuable, non-renewable. It's running out. The clock's ticking off, clicking down. And how we manage our time reflects our priorities, our values, and our boundaries. If you struggle with time management, whether you're chronically late, you're overcommitted, or external blame, and we'll talk about that in a second, they often have internal boundary problems. So poor time boundaries dishonor both ourselves and others by creating unnecessary stress. You break commitments. You fail to steward what God's given you. So common lack of internal boundaries are feeling omnipotence. We call the savior complex. I should be able to do everything for everyone all the time. You're not the savior. You're not a messiah complex. It leads to chronic overcommitment, exhaustion, and lack of focus. It's rooted either in pride that you are indispensable and your advice is needed. You don't understand, David. They ask me a question and they need to hear from me. You're arrogant. No, they don't. Who do you think you are? I mean, give me a break. No, that they were finally listening to wisdom out of my mouth. And we all know that my wisdom is God Almighty. Come on now. Come on. Or it's a fear of feeling shame when others are disappointed. I had to answer because I couldn't say no because they'd feel badly about me saying no, and I can't deal with the feeling of disappointing them. So I've got to be everything for everyone all the time. You just overextend out of the savior complex. And those aren't healthy. No. Or over responsibility for others' feelings. If I leave, it'll hurt her feelings, his feelings. That's people pleasing, guilt driven decision making. See, boundaries remind us that we are responsible to people, but not for them. I love Galatians 6:2 and 5, which I think I've referenced before. They're two different Greek words. If someone is overwhelmed, there's a burden, there's a Greek word for burden that's overwhelming. We help them. If it is overwhelming, we help them. But in verse 5, but everyone has their own cargo or load to carry. Everyone's got their own junk to deal with. But sometimes people are overwhelmed. We need to help them out. Tornadoes and fires and divorces and deaths and illnesses, real victim state. Absolutely. But if it's not that, this is back to bad boundaries. My time, if I leave now, it's going to hurt their feelings and I can't deal with that. Well, yeah, you can, but we need to work on that. A lack of planning, living in the moment. I don't think about traffic. I don't even think about it. Usually that's a sign of impulsivity. You have a hard time just not saying no to I got to give in right this second. Disorganization, avoidance of responsibility. People who are this way, I would also ask this question. I would say, what are you afraid would happen if you said, let's think about the traffic? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't plan? What were you afraid would happen? And I've heard people say that I would miss out, I wouldn't have fun, life would be miserable, I'd be bored. Okay, let's talk about that. What are you afraid about that? What's wrong with those things? I'm telling you, there's a little baby child that's so afraid of something, and that's why I didn't think about the traffic. I just didn't care. Um, Rationalization, he's my friend, it's okay if I'm late. He won't mind, he won't mind. You minimize that consequence. But it leads to broken trust and unreliable relationships, and it does. If your other friend is even basically healthy, you're going to say, I don't count on you. They may even think it. I've had talks with my friends before. I said, man, I love you, brother, but when you don't do that, when you say you're going to, I don't believe you. Well, I didn't mean, okay, I believe you didn't mean to, but I don't trust you. If you say with movies and you say we're going to do it, and you cancel all the time, I mean, why even tell me you're going to do it? You rationalize that I get over it. I don't get over it. Like I'm gracious, but I learn patterns. I mean, or if you seek validation or emotional strokes, it's like, are you okay? What happened? I was worried. You enjoy the attention. I've met people many times. They walk in, validation for being the listener rescuer. They need me right now, so I can't leave. The need to feel important can lead to self-sabotaging. So all that to say, this sense of you can be the rescuer, the person can be the rescuer to check on them. They can be the rescuer in that moment, and they like the attention when they're late. Where were you? I was worried sick. It's okay. Just Bobby needed me, and I had to be there, and I couldn't leave him. I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons. Anyway, loving yourself means understanding your time is the primary means by which we are able to fulfill our moral duties on earth. So if you struggle with this, you ask the question, what am I gaining by mismanaging my time? What's the benefit? Nothing. No, really ask the question. Or ask this question this way. What am I avoiding by not planning my time? What am I avoiding? There maybe there's a little scared child that says, I'm avoiding feeling stuck. I'm avoiding feeling trapped. And I'm going to say, okay, why is that? Why is that so bad? What are you afraid of feeling stuck for? And they're probably going to say, because when I was a kid, my mom and dad forced me to do a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do, and I never got to have a voice. And now I don't give a rip. I throw caution to the wind. I mean, I don't know. Just you keep following that. What are you afraid of? Where'd that come from? Why are you scared of that? Without judging and worry, tell me more. What are you avoiding? What's the benefit of that? What's the root cause of people pleasing? For most people, the root cause of people pleasing is, if I save some time, all the iceberg, it's the belief that I can't tolerate the distressing feelings I feel when you're disappointed. It's not disappointing the person. Everyone says they're wrong. Therapy knows the difference. It's not because they're scared to disappoint the person. It's when the other person's disappointing and I feel uncomfortable because they're disappointed and I can't process those feelings of uncomfortability. Those distressing feelings that your distress, they're beyond my control. And so I want to avoid them at all costs, so I'll do what you want. And if you're in the Christian world, you go, oh, they're just being kind and Christian. No, they're people-pleasing, which means you're not doing it for the person. In those moments, you're serving the other person to avoid feeling distressed. You're using them so you feel happy. That person in front of you becomes an object, a means to an end, and that is not Christian. It's accidental, right? It's subconscious, but that's what's happening. Hey, can you do so? Sure. Okay. I feel better because I said yes. But there's a small part of you that goes, I don't want to do that. And now I'm mad at them because I didn't want to do it. Be quiet. Don't you know what Jesus said? But I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. Now, I'm not saying in general in life, we never, ever, ever as Christians, sometimes we go, part of me don't do that, but this is the right thing to do. Right. That's when it's the right thing to do. That's a moral issue. It's the right thing to do. It's like loving my enemy, right? Matthew 5 and Luke 6. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. So the voice says, I don't want to. I go, I know, baby, but this is the right thing to do. That's very different from, but they'll be upset. What would they think about me if I don't? Those are, you see, they're very different. They're very different. So that's the core of most people pleasing. Now, where does that come from? Almost always from childhood. It came from all kind of usually, and each person's distinct in this, but you'll ask them, I mean, there's just so much commonalities. Either they had a mom or dad who modeled this for them, that there was a mom, or caretaker, I'll say caretaker, but usually a mom or dad, that they themselves had problems with people pleasing themselves, and so they modeled whenever someone asked mom or dad to do something, they said yes almost every single time. And then on top of that, it was praised as the really caring, generous servant one. And so, and I also want to be, and I also got praised a lot when I did whatever they want. And they would praise me publicly as they're so compliant. And they don't use that word. What parents would then use is a horrible word. They would say they're good boys and girls. They're good. What they mean is they're compliant to do what you want. And so the child learns, oh, now I'm good when I do what other people want all the time. It reinforces the constant self-pleasing, which is horrible. So things like that happen all the time. Or they're just berated when they don't do what they want. How dare you have a view, child? You do exactly what, and so they just learn out of fear, I've got to do what you want, or you're going to abandon me, or you're going to hurt me. That's it. Abandonment is hurt, or you're going to physically hurt me. And that's a survival deep mechanism. Okay. And we call that in psychological trauma response, it's a fawning response. It's the, okay, whatever you want, don't hurt me, or don't leave me. So then they grow up, and that fawning response becomes their default trigger when someone might hurt them or leave them. And so, can you do so and so? Yes. And people give into some horrible things to keep that child from feeling the distressing feelings, like being raped, because it's rape. When they don't want to do it, they go, oh, okay. They just got raped. Or go drink this with me, or do this drug with me, or whatever the drug is. In that sense, it's a woundedness. It's a deep. You didn't ask all that. I'm trying to encourage. We're out of time, but so again, it's worth exploring, not judging. It's to go. Let's talk about that tendency to give in when the voice says, "I didn't really want to do it." Then why did you do it? Let's figure out why you did it. Let's figure out what the woundedness is, the fear is, and let's heal that. If that part can be heard and healed, it just the other part just kind of falls away. You don't feel the need to people please as much. You go, yeah, I used to do that. Some of y'all might be recovering people pleasers. Yeah, amen. I'm a recovering perfectionist. That's my problem, not yours. I think we got 12 seconds. Thank you, God, so much for boundaries. Help us do them well. Help us love ourselves, Jesus. Amen.